We remember them here at the Bali Memorial in Kings Park. When we come back, tears and triumph as Rick Arden tracks the incredible history of Western Australia.
Girl crazy, he's a once-in-a-lifetime prize I'm dreaming of.
Tonight I want to take you way back to the very first film ever shot in WA, a remarkable peek at our early days. It's an incredible journey from harsh colonial settlement and backwater to boomtown, depression, war, amazing wealth and everything in between. It's the history of Western Australia. This is Perth almost 100 years ago. Someone with a newfangled film camera is at the intersection of Barrack and Murray Streets. This is the first scene ever filmed in our state. To West Australians today, the view still seems somehow familiar. A moment captured in time, long ago. But back then, Western Australia had already come so far. The first West Australians came here more than 50,000 years before. This 1950s reenactment depicts the arrival of Captain James Stirling in the Swan River colony in 1829, the beginning of European settlement. At first we grew slowly, then in the late 1800s we struck gold. A colonial backwater transformed. These were our first boom years. Our first Premier, John Forrest, a shrewd visionary, pushed development, aided by men like Charles Yelverton O'Connor. It was C.Y. O'Connor, the brilliant Irish engineer who built Fremantle Harbour, developed our rail network and constructed a massive water pipeline to Kalgoorlie. In the 70s, there were still West Australians around who knew him.
He and Murta O'Connor and Biddy O'Connor, now Lady Least here, used to go riding in the morning. They used to pass my place in Ord Street and ride out towards Rob's Jetty.
With gold fueling prosperity, the timber industry and farming expanded rapidly. Western Australia became one of the world's great sheep and wheat producers.
This is the Weybridge at Bruce Rock, Western Australia. Careful checking gives the exact weight of the wheat cartage.
By the Great War, our growing cities and towns sent off thousands of strapping young men, eager to fight for king and empire. These were the first Anzacs, leaving King George Sound in Albany in 1914. Thousands of West Australians would never return. By the 20s, our population hit 350,000. Good times were back. For the fortunate, these really were the roaring 20s. Foy's department store sold the latest fashions and furs. In 1929, we celebrated our first 100 years. There were parades in towns across the state, this one in Collie. It was a big year for Fremantle. The port became a city. Perth's parade was an endless stream of floats celebrating industry and culture. It was a sweltering day for the crowd in their coats. But WA and the rest of the world were soon hit by the Great Depression.
Unless you've been through it, you don't understand just how severe it is, how cruel it can be, how sad it can be. But you learn the hard way. The fact is that it made or broke you.
Isolated by distance, we felt cut off, ignored by the rest of Australia. In 1933, 70% of West Australians voted to secede from the rest of the nation. The issue eventually faded and died, and we united against our greatest threat.
Now Australia was isolated from the north. It was only a matter of time before she, in her turn, would be attacked.
World War II came to Western Australia in 1942. Japanese Zeros bombed Broome, destroying 24 aircraft on the ground, including flying boats packed with women and children evacuated from Java. 70 people were killed. It was WA's Pearl Harbor. The Japanese also bombed Port Hedland, Exmouth, Derby and Wyndham. In Perth, we met the challenge. Everyone pitched in, from Governor Mitchell's wife to school children filling sandbags. Volunteers practiced first aid drills. Mills and Ware's biscuit trucks became makeshift ambulances. Fire crews honed their skills at Fremantle and the port became a crucial naval base. The local MP was John Curtin, Australia's wartime Prime Minister. These were dark days. In 1941, 645 Australian lives were lost when the cruiser Sydney disappeared off Carnarvon after a battle with the German raider Cormoran, the nation's worst maritime disaster. When victory came, thousands packed onto the Perth Esplanade. Servicemen and women marched along St George's Terrace. The crowd's greatest applause for the injured soldiers in a procession of ambulances. In Fremantle, more victory celebrations. The Mayor, Frank Gibson, presented flags to school children. For these young West Australians, prosperity was about to begin. The scene in Fremantle Harbour. Their fathers and brothers came home. Home to start families and spark the post-war expansion of Western Australia. Some returning from war would become premiers.
To my surprise, I got involved in the political party fairly heavily.
Charles Court would play a pivotal role developing the natural resources of the state.
Some of you have remarked about the ladies' hats and their dresses. I wonder what they'll say in 50 years' time when they look back at these pictures.
It was an exciting time to be alive because you were creating things, you were inventing things, you were getting people used to doing things differently.
But it wasn't easy.
People have got to realise that we had no money. And Canberra said clearly they weren't going to help us.
Eventually, big overseas corporations paid for the railways, ports and towns, and our north started to develop. When Premier David Brand and Lang Hancock signed their momentous iron ore agreement, our future seemed secure. And in the south, little old Perth exploded into a vast suburban metropolis. The first blocks of flats appeared.
Wandana is an Aboriginal word meaning distant view, and the flats are located on the boundary of Kings Park, a 1,000-acre flora reserve overlooking the city proper. An ideal location and providing high-class flats for the people. Comfortable and attractive bedrooms and a modern kitchen with all the very latest appliances.
And Housing Commission suburbs sprang up. Simple weatherboard and brick homes that would become so familiar, homes to generations.
Meets the needs of the average Western Australian family. Husband, wife, 3 small children.
By the 60s, we thought we had it made.
Perth, city on the Swan. Charm and glamour mark an appeal that is distinctive of the capital of Western Australia. A river setting of unusual scenic beauty to a backdrop of clean, rising buildings.
Today, our state is booming again, and again it's our natural resources fueling the boom.
Never get smug about it. That's only a fraction. The best is yet to come. There's no limit to where we can go.
No limit indeed. There's more to the history of Western Australia, though. There's those special times in the life of our state that seem to live in our memory forever. Next, Monica Koss and Paula Vos recall those special moments and events we'll never forget.
Have I got some memories for you? Over the past 175 years, there's been some big events in Western Australia, events that have put our state on the map.
Roger, loud and
It's 1962. Astronaut John Glenn is soaring in space, and below, a small city turns on its lights.
Roger, that is Perth and Rockingham you're saying there. Roger, the lights show up very well. And thank everybody for turning them on, will you?
That simple act grabbed international headlines and forever earned Perth the title City of Lights. 36 years later, 77-year-old Glenn was back in orbit aboard a space shuttle. And again, Perth turned it on for an old friend.
I can tell you Perth has expanded in size since the last time I looked at it from in orbit.
A much closer encounter with space came in 1979, the year we celebrated our 150th birthday.
It was awe-inspiring, really. At first I couldn't believe that it would be Skylab, but obviously the flash was Skylab exploding as it approached the coast here over Albany, and then broke into hundreds, literally hundreds of multicoloured pieces.
It's hard to appreciate now, but there was worldwide hysteria when the crippled US space station Skylab threatened Earth. No one knew where it would hit. While millions feared for their lives, others made the most of it. Then one night, out-of-control Skylab came crashing down on Western Australia.
Well, I thought we were, dead for sure. It's one thing I'll never forget, and it'll always be in my head, at seeing that Skylab coming towards us.
We lost track of the thing on its last pass somewhere around, what the devil's name of it? The Kerguelen Islands or something, roughly that, Ascension Island. And the next thing we heard was that it was coming down over Australia.
Charcoal lumps of Skylab landed on a tin shed in Esperance.
I just look up, it was just like cutting 100 metres off, it felt like it was, and then the shell went quiet and the sonic boom after that, and everybody's like, oh, what was that? 17-year-old Stan Thornton quickly grabbed the chunks, got on a plane to America and claimed $10,000, the prize for the first bit of Skylab returned to the United States. I'd been to Perth and been to, as far as Geraldton, but never out of Western Australia, and yeah, that's when it started buzzing. I think the head started spinning. I was getting followed around everywhere by at least 4, 5, 10 cameras at a time.
In remote Baladonia, meanwhile, the lone telecom phone box got a very important call.
Then they said that the President of the United States wished to speak, and another voice came on, and he said that he wished to apologise to all the Australian people for the inconvenience of Skylab landing over Australia.
The biggest chunk, an oxygen cylinder, was hauled into Kalgoorlie, where police seized it as lost property. In 1952, another bright light lit up skies. The nuclear age and the Cold War came to Western Australia. Off a remote northwest island group called the Montebellos, Britain became the world's third atomic power.
A towering column of sea and mud, hurled upwards with a force almost too terrifyingly powerful to describe.
A blast of a different kind rocked Forest Place in the 70s, perhaps one of the most explosive political clashes in WA's history. Prime Minister Gough Whitlam facing furious farmers. Farmers bitterly opposed Whitlam's tariff policies. We've seldom seen politics this divisive. Fights in the crowd, missiles hurled, little old ladies caught in the crush.
Had it not been for Labour and men like Whitlam and others, this country would have been a Japanese colony. Get no mistake about it.
It was a gentler reception in 1954 for a young Queen's first visit to Western Australia. It seemed the whole state turned out. Thousands did but see her passing by. Maybe not as memorable, but the opening of a new bridge across the Swan in 1959 was to change Perth forever. This is the view from Kings Park in the 50s before the Narrows Bridge. A quiet bend in the river, no Kwinana freeway, just a meandering lane.
Hello there, I'm from TVW.
Good afternoon.
Do you live over this side of the river?
Yes, sir. I live in 2 km.
And what do you think the new bridge is going to mean to you in the way of getting to work and also perhaps in the way of new fares?
Well, it will cut down the fare by about half.
This is the first driver's eye view crossing south over the Narrows before the official opening and before the millions and millions of crossings to follow. Before the Narrows, Perth's main river crossing was the Causeway, and it was hardly the rush hour of today.
A surging mass of peak hour traffic that moves in unrestricted flow along modern public highways.
And look at this view before the arch lost its barracks.
Which has beautifully terminated the western vista of St George's Terrace, main street of Perth, for over 100 years.
The barracks demolished amidst furious protest, making way for the interchange linking the Narrows to the Mitchell Freeway. Alison Fan updated progress in the 70s.
It's been 10 years since the Main Roads Department started to reclaim their first piece of river for the Narrows Interchange and Mitchell Freeway.
Western Australia's link to the rest of the world has always been tenuous. This is the Air Highway in the 50s.
By then, a trickle of vehicles tracked across every day. The journey is still regarded as a hazardous adventure.
But it all changed in 1976 when we became less isolated, less cut off. Our road link was finally sealed, black top all the way. A young Howard Sadler greeted one of the first truckies to make it across.
How's the trip? Fine. Mate, very good time across there. How's the new road going to affect you? Oh, no more bull dust.
Don't go away. Chris Mainwaring's next with some West Australian sporting legends.
Malcolm Brown, baddest man on the footy ground, better than old King Kong, meaner than a junkyard dog.
Welcome to Subiaco Oval, a West Australian sporting shrine. There's been a football ground here for 96 years and Subi's seen more than its share of legends. In fact, little old Western Australia isn't bad at producing sporting stars, and I'm not just talking footy.
Subiaco Oval. For most of the year it looks like this. But for a few weeks in October, a melody called football fever reaches its peak of excitement.
Doig, Sheedy, Jerovic, names that echo in distant cheers, and so many memorable moments, like Austin Robertson Jr.'s goal-kicking record in the 1968 season.
The crowd, a sim of excitement here as Austin Robertson goes back to try and beat Bernie Naylor's wonderful record. Here it goes, all eyes on the full forward. There goes the kick, this could be it. It's it! He's broken Bernie Naylor's record, and congratulations to Austin Robertson. Rick Sheedy.
The waffle competition was alive and well in those days, and you're getting 50,000 odd people to grand finals. I remember catching the first train out of Claremont Station in 1964 to watch Claremont play East Fremantle. Claremont beat East Fremantle. I was one of the first people at the gates at 6 a.m.
Graham Polly Farmer was WA's greatest football legend. Farmer revolutionised the handball, changing the game forever. Barry Cable, the other legend, a deadly accurate drop kicker who never let his modest height hold him back. The state was stunned in 1979 when Cable almost died in a tractor accident.
And anyway, I started it and I put it into neutral and started it, and probably because of the vibration and so forth, it obviously slipped into gear. And then from then on, of course, things happened that quick that really before I knew where I was, I was underneath the wheel.
For 10 days, Cable's life hung in the balance. Another footballer to emerge in the 60s created big news for other reasons.
Malcolm Brown, baddest man on the footy ground, better than old King Kong, meaner than a junkyard dog.
East Perth were playing the VFL side Carlton. The clashes were hard, tempers were high, and it had to happen. Veteran commentator Lou Richards couldn't believe his eyes as he informed an astonished radio audience back in Melbourne Brown was fighting the whole Carlton team. And to add injury to insult, Brown won. If interstate followers of the game had ever doubted Brown's reputation as an Iron Man, they didn't now.
In 1976, a young Claremont kid who became a champion at the Tigers in Essendon claimed football's ultimate prize.
When I won the Brownlow in '76, it was more of a relief than anything else. I was immensely proud, of course, of being the first Western Australian to win it, and so I felt proud to be, I guess, representing Western Australia in the VFL.
In 1977, WA got a chance to prove we could teach the Big V a lesson, the first state of origin. Polly Farmer coached the West Australians against Ron Barassi's Victorians.
West Australia in front, Cable, brilliant hand pass. Goes in and does it himself when Reid couldn't take it. Superb play, Barry Cable, right up to full forward, and there it is. That's the way you play football.
I can remember with about 5 minutes to go when we were 90-odd points in front towards the end of the game, the Victorian runner came out on the ground, and I thought, well, why is he going around all the players? There can't be much of a message that Ron Barassi is giving. What he said was, if you lose by more than 100 points, you're walking back across the nullarbors.
A loud tuck in. Siren is gone. There goes the siren. Western Australia have won, and won brilliantly.
Lucky for the Vics, they only lost by 94 points.
But football changed forever when a brash young band of WA's stars pulled on the blue and gold here at Subiaco Oval in 1987.
Welcome to Perth, a playground for millionaires, a holiday haven for people from all around the world, a place of golden beaches and the home of Australia's newest VFL team, the West Coast Eagles.
A small crowd of 20,000 at Subi weren't disappointed.
It's the start of a piece of history for the West Coast Eagles as Lee wins the first tap away, a chance.
West Coast scored in minutes.
That was a top tackle. Over it comes to Laurie Keane on the left foot, brings it towards the goals. Was it touched? No, it's a goal to the West Coast Eagles. A good goal to the big ruckman, Laurie Keane.
It wasn't long before the crowd came alive.
Bowers there from Richmond, couldn't take possession. Keane does. Keane has the snap and goal. There's nobody down there. It bounces. 1, 2, 3. And the Eagles have hit the front.
30.5 minutes gone. There it is. Remarkable scenes at Subiaco Oval. Try as they might, the policemen will lose this battle. Ron Alexander smiles. The crowd spilling onto the ground because the West Coast Eagles have captured the imagination of the WA football public. Marvellous performance today, and the Eagles win it by 14 points.
Just 5 years later, the Eagles' first premiership.
The Eagles are going to win their first leg.
Premiers 1992.
And we did it again 2 years later.
Biggest score for the whole season. And Dean Kemp with Robert Dippett a minute ago. Dimmer.
Thanks very much, Bruce. Well, they're starting to catch up now. 2 premierships. You've come over here and now you've conquered us once again. What's left for the Eagles?
Oh, just to keep on keeping on, Dipper, and hopefully, get up there again next year.
You want to send a few cheeros back home?
Yeah, it's all the boys that I know back in Kalgoorlie. Well done.
Well done, Dean. Good on you, bud.
In 1995, we sent another team to the AFL.
The Fremantle Dockers officially in the competition, up against the Tigers. There's the bounce and a beauty too. Burton missed it. Will this be their first goal?
Looks good.
Good looking kick. I think it's home. It is.
Fremantle's first match was a thriller.
Can they muster a very late goal, the Dockers, and win this? The kick from Waters to the wing. Durkay juggles the mark. He's got it. We're down to 45 seconds.
Himself. He can go long. There's the siren. Richmond have won it in a thriller. And Gerard Neesham ponders what might have been.
But it's not just football. Today, WA teams are beating Australia's best, no matter the sport. Long before these successes came our first experience of international sporting triumph.
Through TVW in Perth and throughout Australia and beyond, you're watching a coverage of a red-letter occasion in Australian sport.
Commonwealth nations packed the new Perry Lake Stadium in 1962 for the Empire Games, focusing world attention on our city in a way we'd never experienced before.
This is a wonderful contingent. They're beautifully dressed. Gee, they look smart. This is the best turned-out Australian team I've ever seen.
Yes, regardless.
Herb Elliott was our homegrown West Australian star.
Victory, and he's going to be well inside the previous world record.
has ever seen.
And at the 1960 Olympics in Rome, Elliott romped home to win gold in the 1500. A few years later, a young tennis star retired to Perth, or so she thought.
Well, Western Australia's a pretty easy way of lifestyle here, and I think that's the reason why I came here. I'd come to the West and nobody knew me over here. I could come and hide.
But Margaret Court was soon off again, and with Perth her new home base, she became Queen of Wimbledon, winning 3 All-England crowns and in 1970, the Grand Slam.
I won more Grand Slams than any man or woman. Back when I was winning them, to me, they were just another tournament. I'd won 62 altogether, and I didn't even know that.
But West Australia's sports heroes haven't just had 2 legs.
Mount Eden was a sort of a free course. He could lose 50 or 60, 70 yards and still win his races.
Nogel in front, Mount Eden on the outside under full pressure. Mount Eden got the upper hand close to home, and Mount Eden's won from Nogel, 3rd round on.
A decade later, it was Pure Steel. The horse that loved to swim at the beach also claimed epic come-from-behind wins.
Pure Steel doing the better. Michael Frost on the inside. Paleface Adios out wide. A Moses Star. Pure Steel beats Michael Frost.
The 70s also saw another giant of West Australian sport arrive on the scene.
Some people cross the line and all of a sudden it's that white line fever, and I'm sure I had that. I just always felt you're given a right to sort of be on this earth. You've got to make the most of it, I suppose.
Lilly became an Aussie legend, and the chant of his name became a trademark of the game.
The memories of them yelling kill, 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 eventually it sort of became Lilly, Lilly when I was bowling. It was a proud thing, I guess, for me. But it was something that you couldn't always respond, unfortunately, because often you were spent and they were trying to lift you. But often it did lift you.
In 1983, tradition was smashed again when a WA yacht sailed into history.
It looks like Australia too is back in front. Absolutely incredible. The America's Cup can still go to Australia.
Says that Bertrand has to cover. What about Connor, and what can he do now, if anything?
He's in an extremely precarious situation. In fact, the most precarious that one could imagine.
The Australia 2 crew realise that they are on the way to breaking 132 years of sporting history. They are in the box seat right now.
Australia 2 is by the line, and the boat goes.
Helen Bond stood like Moses parting the waves, and the keel became public property at last.
This may seem like a very obvious question, but is this the greatest day in your whole life?
Yes, without question it is.
In Perth, we watched through the night. At Royal Perth Yacht Club, a champagne-soaked Prime Minister joined delirious celebrations.
They get to declare a public holiday? Yes, no one would want to work today at any rate, would they?
I tell you what, any boss who sacks anyone for not turning up today is a bum.
The night we'll never forget. And there was another night when life in Western Australia changed forever. The night television arrived. After the break, Jeff Newman will take us back through the archives to celebrate our state's birthday with a smile.
So, are you wide awake, are you?
Go whenever you feel a fee. Yes.
For 45 of Western Australia's 175 years, television has been a constant part of our lives, and it's a rich source of some of our happiest memories. Here in the Channel 7 archives, we've come up with some birthday treats that are sure to give you a laugh.
I want to go back to WA, back to WA. That's the only place for me.
Rolf Harris helping celebrate our 150th anniversary 25 years ago. We've always enjoyed a party. So imagine the excitement in 1959 when our first television screens crackled into life.
Hello there. This is Jeff Walker of TVW Channel 7.
Anticipation had been building for months.
From across the seas came the liner Oronsay, bearing £80,000 worth of transmitter equipment and instruments. After careful unloading, the precious cargo was packed onto a fleet of trucks, then convoyed with police escort through metropolitan highways and city streets to Bickley.
Then the big night.
In city streets, there was a mild attack of television fever as crowds gathered round shop windows. And inside, demonstrators displayed and explained television sets to prospective buyers. They were never short of a keen and interested audience.
Crowds crammed around shop windows. Awestruck families gazed at black and white screens.
Stand by on the floor. 15 seconds. Focus up, camera 2.
On behalf of all of us here at TVW Channel 7, I'm very pleased, and I must admit just a little bit relieved, to be able to say at long last, welcome to television in Western Australia.
We were hooked. Television changed us overnight. Look what happened when the Sydney-based hit comedy character Mavis Bramston came to town. Thousands turned out to see her at the airport. Thousands more lined city streets. That evening she appeared on In Perth Tonight with a dapper young Gary Carville. Check out these classic 60s views of her adventure through Perth.
Oh, ABC, how nice. That's the hair I'm doing that at, not them. I mean, I'm all for him, non-commercial and all that. Yes, I know the game, asking me what he wants. I told him what he needed. We were just getting to round this corner, and the man said, I think we'll make Hay Street while the sun shines. And we did, and there we are in Hay Street. I think it's Hay Street. Oh, lovely. Here we are, lots of lovely, charming people.
As Channel 7 grew into a West Australian icon, Telethon was the annual highlight. And Australia's king of television, Graham Kennedy, started a telethon tradition.
This is embarrassing. Mum's just rung up and she's giving me $100 to put mine back on. The Premier's coming. The Premier's coming. The Premier's coming. We're starting to panic. Perhaps the Premier's in the nutty too.
Neil Armstrong hadn't yet made it to the moon. But here at Channel 7, we had our own moon man in Spellbound with Martin St James.
Presenting Martin St James with Spellbound.
You are a moon man. Yes, you're from the moon. And when I awaken you, you will understand every word that the moon man says. Sir, are you wide awake, are you? Does anybody... Does anybody understand what this gentleman's talking about at all?
A West Australian tradition was born in 1972, the first Christmas pageant. The early years saw the pageant held in midday December heat.
Well, it's Percy the Penguin and his igloo, which we all hope doesn't melt today because it's very hot.
Our climate always encouraged a relaxed outdoors lifestyle.
This is barbecue country, where steaks sizzle in the starlit warmth of a Mediterranean climate.
The beach, summer, pretty girls, it was inevitable really, Miss West Coast competitions. In 1976, I was there for the announcement of a winner who'd become a household name.
Miss West Coast 1976 is number 3, Karen Peeney.
Karen Peeney went on to bear much more as a pin-up girl and star on The Paul Hogan Show. Someone else who went on to big things started out as a cheeky young Channel 7 reporter.
The stage is now set, and within a few moments the 1971 World Cockroach Racing Championship gets underway. As you can see, it's standing room only in the main lounge, while in the background the gentle strains of the Royal Navy Band lend specially for this auspicious occasion a drumming excitement to a hysteria pitch.
go, they're racing. It was an even break. There it is. We've got little Toot. Oh, hello there. The 48 ran back with us in the wrong lane. That's going to be disqualified unless it gets back in that lane. We've got little Toot out here. 30 yards at the clear. 40 yards. Little Toot.
Well, that's it for 1971. Whether Parkerville has succeeded in building itself a booming tourist trade, it's not for me to say. I will say, however, there are definite irregularities in the running of the championship. For example, it's the first time I've ever seen a chief steward kill a competitor.
It was international fame also sought by Daily News cartoonist Paul Rigby when he perfected the art of limp
This
falling.
is one of our previous world champions, Mr. Twisty Ankle Dawson. He's doing an Arthur Murray cross sassy, twist and drop, and quite nicely performed.
Limp falling could strike anywhere, anytime.
And one more for the road. We spend a third of our life in a horizontal position for one reason or another.
Reporter Terry Willisey thought he'd give it a go.
Go whenever you feel a fee. Yes.
Ouch. Well, as you can see, we can be a weird mob. But I hope you enjoyed it.
Today, Western Australia is home to 2 million people. Our state is an economic powerhouse. We're one of the wealthiest places on earth.
Experts predict there'll be almost 2.9 million of us by 2029, our 200th anniversary.
We hope you've enjoyed this special look back at the past 175 years.
Happy birthday, Western Australia.